My guest today is Charlie Botterill. He's a Hyrox world record holder and ambassador, pure sport and MyProtein athlete, and a budding entrepreneur at the age of 23. Charlie and I dig into a wide array of topics, including Charlie's remarkable first season and how he set the UK Hyrox world record, his sports background including football and pro cycling. We discuss the influence of trauma on athletic performance, Charlie's role as a Hyrox ambassador, if he would ever be tempted to take performance-enhancing drugs, Charlie's past struggles with an eating disorder, his previously untold off-season training secrets, the moral implications of performance enhancement, Charlie's thoughts on body image and the likeliness of PEDs in Hyrox, his unique approach to self-improvement, Charlie's list of 10 things he's going to do before he's 30, and the book he's writing and a few of the useful tools and concepts from it. Charlie is a fascinating individual. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing his progress over the next few years. I think he's going to go very far. Please enjoy and be inspired by my conversation with Charlie Botterill. Hey everyone, just a quickie before we get into the conversation. The podcast is always going to be free, so I'm never going to ask you to pay for anything. But if you could do me the kindness of subscribing and maybe leaving a review, that would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you and enjoy the episode. So Charlie, tell me, you've been making waves in Hyrox. Talk me through what happened last season.
From the beginning, or just a brief overview? So
give me it all.
I started my season last year in Birmingham in the men's pro, and I ran a 107 there, which at the time I was very happy with. Like 107 for my first pro race was like, I was really, really pleased with it. And also considering that I had a university project that day, so I woke up at about 6 a.m. to go and watch Hunter McIntyre and John Wynn do their doubles race. And I had to film a documentary on that. So I spent the rest of the day editing that. And then my race didn't actually start till about 9:10. So I got to the start line and I was just like trying to keep my eyes open at points, if I'm honest. So I did that. And then the next month I had London. And at the XL in London, I always do the Open because it was my first ever race there. I did the Open. And now, no matter where I get in the sport, I'm always going to do the Open at the XL just to compare like where I've come from at the start. So I did the Open there, ran a 59.07, and then I thought, oh, like I'm actually starting to like improve a bit here and really like push on. And then after that, a couple of people like reached out to me and sent me products and whatnot, and I started to get a bit like of notice essentially. And that's where I met George Wooten, who owns Theta, a clothing company. And he's helped me massively over the past 6 months. So that was the first time I met him. And then had a couple of months off, started training for an ultra marathon, a charity one that I ran in February. And then before that, I had Hyrox Manchester, where I ran a 58. Hyrox Vienna, which was like the European champs or the Open European champs, where I came second. I ran 58 again there, but the week before I dislocated my shoulder. So I led the race going into the wall balls, and that like it was playing football with my mates. So it was probably a bit of a stupid decision from me. So I was just like, my shoulder's going to give in on the wall balls. So I'll just try and have as much of a lead as possible going into the wall balls and just see how long my shoulder lasts. And it lasted about 3 reps, and I was like, oh dear, this isn't going to go well. So I came second in that, so I managed to scrape through, and then ran the ultramarathon in February for charity, which I was quite glad to get out of the way. And then
what distance was that?
It was just under 80k, so I think it was like 78.5k in total, but it was every Premier League stadium in London, and then finishing at Wembley Stadium for the Carabao Cup final. So that was just a bit of a charity thing that I was like, something to tick off while I live in London, just something to raise a bit of awareness and whatnot. But that was good fun. And then after that, I did Hyrox Copenhagen in the pro doubles with Jake Williamson. We ran a 51.51 there, I think, which at the time was like the second fastest ever behind Hunter and Sandy. And I think it's like the third fastest now. And After that, Hyrox Rotterdam, which was just a bit. I went there to break the world record for my age group because I went with my friend Lucy Proctor. So we were both going to go there together and both break the age group world records in the same weekend at the same venue. She held up her part of the deal and broke the women's world record, and I struggled and didn't break the men's one. So that was a failed mission, but then I did a doubles with my friend Paul the next day, and that kind of made up for it because that was good fun. And then London, Hyrox London. So I did the men's pro on the Saturday night. I ran a 102, which I crossed the line and I was very annoyed about because the training leading up to it, I was I'm capable of 58, 57. And I crossed the line in 102 and I was like, I'm annoyed at this. So went home. I got home at about 1 o'clock in the morning. So going into the Sunday morning, didn't sleep because I'd had way too much caffeine before the race. But then
I know that one.
Oh yeah, it's just you just go to bed and you're like, I'm not sleeping tonight. So I put on my Instagram story the next day. Oh, has anyone got an open ticket? I'm a bit angry. I just want to run again. And thankfully my friend Paul had an open ticket that he was getting rid of. So literally rolled out of bed, got some clothes on, had a bit of breakfast, had a can of Red Bull, went to Olympia again, and then I ran 56 in the Open the next day after that pro race and broke the age group world record.
Amazing.
And then it's also fastest time of anyone ever at a British race. So
fastest time ever at a British race.
Yeah, so the fastest solo time there's ever been at a British race, which I didn't realise until after someone said, oh, no one's ever done below 56 and a half minutes, which was quite cool. And then I did the relay the next day with my mates and we set the British record for that as well. So all in all, that was a good weekend. And then the whole aim was to crown the season off by winning the world age group world champs in Nice. But I got pretty severe cramp about 10 minutes in, and it was a horrible experience. I ran around in 110, but I could hardly do anything. I think the burpees took me 8 minutes, just because every time I jumped, my glute would just cramp up, and I was just there this is horrible. But I finished it because I had family come out, and I'm not just going to pull out because of some cramp. I'll finish it and say I'm done. And then that brings us to where we are now, the current season, been training hard and off season, and hopefully it all comes to fruition in Birmingham in 5.5 weeks' time.
Wow. Yeah, what a season. Was that your first season as well, wasn't it?
First full season.
First full season.
So my first ever Hyrox was November 2022.
Gotcha. Right. So, and that season before, did you just do, how many races did you do?
I finished 4 races. All of them were open races, apart from the World Champs, which was a pro race. So Birmingham was actually my second pro race.
Right.
But yeah, nothing really of note there. My first race I did a 113. And then I got my open time down to 104 in 4 or 5 months after that, and then came into this season.
Yeah. Still quick. I heard you. I was listening to you talking to Greg on Rocks Live, and you mentioned cramp in was it in the doubles?
Yeah.
What have you addressed that? Is that a systemic thing, or is it a fatigue thing, a weakness?
My issue with me is, it's a bit of an odd phrase, I'm a heavy sweater, but I'm also a very salty sweater. Anyone that's ever trained with me will know that within 10 minutes of a workout, it's literally pouring off of my face, and it's so difficult for me to stay adequately hydrated. And then also being a salty sweater, you need to get the electrolytes in as well. And before the Copenhagen race, I was quite ill the week before that, like some stomach issues and whatnot. So I think I was a bit dehydrated going into it anyway. And then combine that with the fact that it's quite easy for me as an athlete to get dehydrated. It's probably my weakness. That kind of led to the cramp in my glute. And I think Nice was the same, but just in the fact that the venue was obscenely hot. So it was just within like literally in my warm up, I was already just soaking, and I was like, this is going to be tough. And then I think the fact that it's my left glute probably stems from the fact that when I was injured a long, long time ago, I've still got some muscle imbalances from that, even though that's what, 7 or 8 years ago now. So it's kind of just, I've been doing a lot of like unilateral work, trying to make both sides of my body the same strength, but it's still like my left still lags behind my right hand side. So I think that's probably the main reasons for it.
Yeah, I'm like super interested in it because, yeah, I'm a fellow cramp sufferer and a fellow. I was going to say feral then, a feral, sweaty, salty sweater. Definitely, I did a half marathon this year, and afterwards, my mate was like touching my head.
You just get little crystals.
Yeah, I was just like covered in like this white stuff. It would just look like sand, like white sand. But yeah, I'm the same. So it's constant work for me. I did a sim the other week, and I got about, I think it was lap 3 or 4, and like both of like my quads started locking up, and I'm running round, and I'm just like smacking my legs.
I'm just trying not to fall over.
Yeah, just trying to like, I don't know, just like wake them up, just like fuck off, stop like freaking out, because I've got like gels coming in, I've got electrolytes coming in, and then the other one that plagues me is like my right calf. But I recently, similar to you, I noticed obviously it's one-sided, but like I've got like a little bit of scar tissue, so I must have pulled it years ago, or I must have torn it years ago, and I'd not known about it. So it's useful knowing those things. But yeah, I think the thing is with cramp is like there's certain ones where you can get through it, and there's ones that will just finish you.
Oh yeah, and like the one I had in Nice was just on and off. Like 2 minutes, I'd be just hardly able to move. 1 minute, I'd feel like I'm on top of the world again, and then within another minute, I'd just be back where I was. So I think that was the issue. Like you see some of my run splits there, and like one of the, I think it was like the 6K, I did like a 3:30 something, and then the next one it was like 5 minutes, and then the one after it was like 3 something again, just because it was just so on and off. The running was the easiest part, like when I was moving, but then the moment I stopped, it was just like unbearable.
Yeah, I remember like cramping up. I think it was my first one. My first ever one was Birmingham last year, and cramping up and then hitting the lunges. And I think you're similar to me because you're a bit more endurance based. I think you said your wall balls, is it your wall balls and your lunges are potentially your sort of weaker ones? I don't know if I heard that right.
At the moment, it's the sleds.
Oh, is it? Right, okay.
But like the ergs, it's just my bread and butter, really. The ergs are really, like every relay I've ever done, it's just, Charlie, you can do the ski in the row kind of thing, just because that's where I'm strongest.
Yeah.
Just anything aerobic based, and then the more strength based it gets, the more I suffer. So, like the ergs.
What's sorry? What about Let's talk about your endurance background actually. So you're pro cycling. What happened there?
So are we going to go all the way back to when I was a footballer, or just the cycling to start with?
Let's go all the way back.
So I was like started football when I was in the under sixes, under fives at my local football club, and gradually got more and more sort of skillful, is probably the best way to put it. Ended up at Reading in their academy as a goalkeeper. Spent a couple of years there. Decided I didn't want to be a goalkeeper anymore and moved outfield and up front for the most part, or the left wing as well. Got scouted by Brentford as a striker because I was the top goal scorer for Berkshire and Oxfordshire in my local league, which was quite exciting when I ended up there. Just unfortunately that didn't really work out just because I'm based in Oxford and Brentford are in London. So for my family to take me there 4 or 5 times a week probably wasn't the most effective use of their free time. So unfortunately that didn't work out. And then still played at my club, but I got 2 pretty severe knee injuries. One was when I was probably about 11, playing in a cup game. I got the ball on the left wing. We were 4 or 5-0 up with literally 4 or 5 minutes to go. And one of the opposition defenders just came and 2-footed me, like crunching tackle, no desire to get the ball, straight into my left knee. I fractured my femur, separated my articular cartilage, tore my meniscus, strained my MCL, and developed osteochondritis dissecans. Bit of a mouthful. In my femur after that. Osteochondritis dissecans.
Chondritis.
Which,
right.
to put it simply, is because my articular cartilage separated, I didn't get any blood flow into my femur, and because I was 11 years old at the time, like that's when you're peak growing, so I wasn't getting any blood into my femur, so essentially my left femur stopped growing if like it was left. So when I had the operation, they had to, it's a bit gory, but they had to drill through the base of my femur, just loads of little holes, just to get blood flow back into it. Wow. So it was quite horrendous. But yeah, I had a 12 to 14 month rehab from that, came back and then just had a recurring injury. And the doctor was like, you can carry on playing after the surgery, but you'll just get injured again. And I was like,
so just continually flare up within that area.
Oh yeah, it was a case of just I'd keep on tearing things. Once you've torn it once, the chance of a recurring injury is like tenfold. So and then once you tear it again, tenfold after that, and it's just not really worth it, really.
So you probably told me, but remind me, how old are you at this point?
I think I was about 13 the first time I injured it, and 16 the second time I injured it.
Right. Okay, so and then presumably you finished up football around the age of 16, is that right?
Yeah, so finished up there and then got into cycling. Mainly, at first it was a form of rehab after my injuries, and then I was like, oh, my parents like cycling, they've always enjoyed it. And then I started it and I was like, oh, I'm actually I'm not bad at this either, and I enjoy it. So got into cycling a lot, started cycling loads, and then had a few issues, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. And then after all that, ended up racing in France. So 2020 happened, COVID, all of that jazz. And I was going to go to uni in September 2020 because I'd just finished sixth form then. That was the year where we never sat our A levels because of lockdowns and whatnot. And literally 2 weeks before I went out to uni, I got an offer from a domestic pro team in France saying, do you want to come and race for us next year? And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So end up in France, December 30th, 2020. Raced in France for the first 6 months of 2021, but just because it was just in and out of lockdown the whole time, just living on my own in a country where I don't know anyone, I was just like, nah, this isn't for me. I'm just going to go to uni instead. And then that's what I did and found Hyrox at uni. And if I'm honest, I couldn't be happier. So I'm glad I went out there, but I'm glad things ended up the way they did.
Yeah. Which uni are you at?
So I've just finished at UCFB. It's like a very small niche sports university in London.
All right. Okay. Um, so have you graduated? Yeah.
Well, I finished in May. I've got my results, but my graduation's not actually until December,
Right.
which
I always
is
get mixed up. I have no idea where we're up to in like the year of like universities. I'm like, are they graduating at the moment? I don't know.
oh yeah. So like pretty much all my friends at other universities have all graduated. Like they all graduate pretty much within like a month of when they hand
Right.
in their final results. But UCFB just do it a bit different, if I'm honest.
Yeah. But you say you got your results.
Yeah,
How'd you get on?
I got a first. So
Oh,
my
amazing.
dissertation was on a very, very niche topic, but I got 84.5 or 85%
What
on
was
it
your
in the end.
dissertation on?
Uh, to put it very, very simply, the link between Max Verstappen and the stock market.
Between what?
Max Verstappen and the stock market. So,
Right.
how his race results directly correlated with the value of the FWONA stock, which is sort of the main correlated stock with Liberty Media, who are the owners of Formula One. So, essentially,
Right.
the bigger the gap that Max Verstappen had on the rest of the field, the lower the value of the stock. But then the
Interesting.
closer the gap, the more valuable the stock went.
Right. Yeah.
Very
Very
niche.
niche. Very niche. Amazing. And tell me about like parents. Like you mentioned that they were into sport. Like I'm interested in that part of your background.
Yeah, so I've got my dad, my stepdad, and my mum. Dad used to be in the parachute regiment in the army, but
Hmm.
now he's really got into sport in later life now. So he always used to be a footballer and whatnot, and then was in the army and is now sort of trying to get into high rocks a bit. So I might have to do a doubles with him at some point. Mum's run 5 marathons, so she's always loved running. She's done Edinburgh, Berlin, not Berlin, Dublin. We were talking about Berlin yesterday. That's why I thought that. So Edinburgh, Dublin, London, New York, and Cardiff, I think, are the five that she's done.
Mm.
So the four home nations and New York. And then my stepdad, he's really into cycling. He's always liked cycling. He's been on so many different tours to like Mallorca and whatnot.
Hmm.
Mallorca, south of France, Italy, Spain, all over the place. So he really likes cycling. And then I think that's kind of always fostered me to get into sport. So, like, not necessarily the sports that they've been into, but it's like there's always been a passion for me to exercise, and there's always been a base and like a willingness to help me get into sport, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, Tell me about congratulations on your Hyrox ambassadorship.
Oh, thank you.
What's what's that involve being a Hyrox ambassador?
So it's essentially just being a positive representative of the sport as a whole and then helping out as and when they need me to. So, for instance, volunteering at events, but then also being there for the community. If someone has a question or a query, they can come to me and I can sort of help guide them on what's the best step to answer that question. And then it's essentially just that really, and making sure that the sport continues to grow. So obviously using any social media growth that I get positively promote the sport and get it to more eyes and help people and just in general just foster a good community element with it. And I think they've done quite well this year in getting the right people in
Mm.
because a lot of the people when we first met up as like an ambassador group I've never actually spoken to before. But then once you hear people's stories, their backgrounds, you've got a really good mix of people who have gone through like quite nice lives, and then some people who have gone through some pretty rough experiences in their life. And it's quite good to have that array of people because you can help more people at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me about that. I know you've been open with your experience of eating disorder. Talk to me about that, like your journey with that and how you're managing it these days.
So I'm trying to think of dates. So in 2018, after my knee injury, and then like before my cycling career really kicked off, I was quite heavily depressed because obviously I was playing football literally 7 days a week, most weeks, 6 or 7 days a week, like loving it. I'd go to school, I'd come home, I'd get changed, and I'd be playing football until 8 p.m. at night. Like that was all my life would be: school, football, homework, bed, school, football, homework, bed. Weekend playing 2 games for 2 different teams. Like I just loved it. Got injured, and then it all just stops like that. Like you go from every day to nothing. And at the time, for me, it was quite a big like outlet. Like I've never been someone who's just like miserable for the sake of being miserable. And it was always like just an outlet for me in sport. We all know like the endorphins and whatnot. So after that, I was kind of like just a bit lost. And it was my GCSEs, and I was like, I've not really got any control of my life at the moment. Like, I can't do what I've kind of wanted to do as a profession for the last 12 years. I can't do that anymore. So that's out the window. I've got GCSEs, which, yes, I can control how much I revise for them and whatnot. And looking back, GCSEs aren't anywhere near as stressful as being an adult. But looking back, and then I was like, I've got no control over my life, but the one thing you can control really is what you ate. And I was never really sure on, like, just looking back at it, I've never really been sure on how it got that bad. And there's like very few ways to describe how it went from just needing a bit more control in my life to me being in hospital. Because it, like, even me when I was in hospital was like, I shouldn't be here, but then it kind of just, it's a very hard set of thoughts to conceptualize. And I was there like, I have no idea how this is happening. And it kind of stuck with me throughout my whole cycling journey. And so from what, mid 2018 to 2021, I was struggling with it, like living a normal, well, somewhat normal life with it. But it is the thing that prevented me from really making it as a professional cyclist, because I just wasn't fueling correctly. Like I wouldn't really eat during the rides. I'd eat everything like in the house, not during the rides, but then for some reason I just wouldn't eat during them. And that really like curtailed my chances there. But then I went to uni, and it kind of, as much as people are a bit like, oh, uni, it's just drinking and whatnot. I didn't really drink at uni, but the just social bombardment you have actually helped me. And I just like, everything just loosened off in my head because it was a brand new beginning with brand new people in a brand new place. And now I'm like fine is the best way to put it. Like I've
Did so did that start when you were in France, or was it something that had already reared its head back home and you took over to France with you?
so yeah, it was reared its head back home. So in 2018 was when it was really bad. Hospitalized, well, like in and out of hospital back end of 2018, early 2019. and then just almost live with it for the remaining what.
And would you mind tapping into like some of like the details of like what like what's the process there? Like, are you like overeating, undereating? But like, what's
So mine was anorexia, so
hmm
undereating essentially. So I went from
hmm
I don't like when I was a kid, I didn't really care about my weight. So I'd say I was probably when I was 16, I was probably 80 kilos. Like I was quite a big kid.
hmm
Like I've always naturally been a bit heavier.
How
A
tall are you?
6 foot,
Right.
well, just ever so slightly over 6 foot, just so I can claim that I'm over 6 foot. But no, I am like 6 foot and half an inch. But I've always been sort of a bit more built. Like it's been
hmm
quite easy for me to put on weight, which makes it a bit more difficult for me to take it off. But yeah, so it was in 2018 was when I first got severe anorexia, and then it never really like left, but it just changed into like disordered eating in general. So once I was cleared of anorexia, I just got like I just had a really disordered eating pattern. So like I just hardly eat during the day and then everything at night. And because I was exercising so much, that was like a ridiculous quantity of food. And I think when I got discharged, it was probably a bit too soon because, and I'm not gonna. There's some things that like probably I shouldn't say about the whole like eating disorder clinic and
hmm
whatnot about how they do things incorrectly. Just because it's probably just a bad personal experience, but it was very much like plugging the gaps in the problem and not fixing it in its entirety. It's kind of get it to a point where it's not going to continue getting worse, but then don't actually go the full way and resolve it and get you better. That's what I found at least. Like,
Is this NHS, I presume?
yeah, it was with the NHS, and obviously, like, they're probably not paid an incredible amount, and it's probably a very stressful job just having to deal with kids that are malnourished pretty much every day. But there was
I
some,
think
yeah, go on,
yeah,
sorry.
I think with the like the NHS and like their whole system is kind of built around like to process people as quick as possible, isn't it?
Mm,
So I think of it with like the difference between like therapy that like good quality therapy that you paid for, psychotherapy, and like they go to the root cause versus um like CBT,
yeah.
where they basically patch you up, look at like the surface level stuff. What are the behaviors? How can we stop the behaviors? What are the habits that we can do? And it's kind of like,
Mm,
you're in and out in a few weeks, aren't you?
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the downside of the NHS is, yeah, they don't really go as far as they should. Have you have you like had any like have you done any therapy like privately or anything since then to look at?
No, like, I still have
hmm
my like not with like an eating disorder or anything, but I still have
hmm
like times where I'm quite depressed just in general. But
hmm
I've come to kind of accept that like I can deal with it now, and
hmm
there's always going to be people in a worse situation than me, and like I can deal with it personally. Like I know when I'm down or when I'm sad or when I'm depressed, like I've experienced it before. I know for the most part why I'll be like down. It would probably be something to do with my environment, like how much I've been sleeping, have I
hmm
spoken to anyone in the past 24 hours kind of thing. And then like I can fix it. So I've not really ever needed anything like privately. I've always been quite like what's the word? Quite just frontal with myself and being like, you can
Like
fix,
self-sufficient,
yeah,
yeah.
like you can fix it yourself. If you ever need it's there, but you've got the tools and resources and the know-how to just get through it yourself.
Yeah, I think like I'm a huge advocate for therapy. However, like give it does hammer you. So like if you're like like you are, you've got loads of things going on, and your life is moving like at a very fast pace. Like as if you've got the tools and the frameworks to be able to like get you through, then like and then that's okay if that makes sense in my opinion. Um, because yeah, like the work is usually a lot of work. Like I like quite similarly. So I went through a big change in my life, and decided to give up drinking, and then I got into all the self improvement stuff. Probably stuff that you found at like 18, 19, I found at 30.
Yeah, just a bit later on
and
in life.
and where am I going with this? And yeah, and I'd found like these things to be able to cope, and you find like tools and things. And then like just this year, I was kind of like, oh, maybe I feel great, but maybe I need to like maybe look at like that little resentment that I'm like stuffing down. So I went to therapy, and I didn't think that there was anything going that much going on, but like once you start digging, um,
You just find like a can of worms and just go down a little
yeah,
rabbit hole of everything that could possibly be going. Yeah.
exactly, and it's kind of like you have to go backwards to go forwards with it. So first, when you do it, it's kind of like fucking hell, like why am I doing this? And like people are like how's the therapy going? I'm like, don't know, it's kind of shit. Like,
Yeah, it's just like
um,
literally just going over everything that has gone wrong.
yeah, because you can like look at like so I was looking at like why I respond to certain things, like a certain parent might have like, oh, they did this, and that means that they don't love me or whatever. And then I would look at it and then go, well, actually, I've just made that up. Like not as like as in like it was just a figment of my imagination
Yeah.
and how I'd converted something that wasn't actually there. So those things are good, but then sometimes you look at stuff and go, oh no, that was kind of shit, and I do have evidence for that, and then dealing with that is slightly different. Um, but yeah, it's like so interesting to hear like how much you like seem to know about yourself at such a young age. And please don't take me as like patronizing you,
Oh no.
young man, young man, you're doing so well. um, but yeah, it's awesome. One of the questions I was wondering about, so with the anorexia, like you went through a very stressful time with uh, having to stop football, and then am I right? Like there was like COVID and those sort of things combined. Was it around then? Have I got that
So
right?
it was between the two of them.
Between the two of them, do you know like what like if there is any? Do you have any indicator of like why it was that particular kind of like negative behavior? Like why it didn't end up being something else? Like, was there anything going on like with societal expectations around like weight and stuff? Do you think there was anything like that?
Well, within the sport of cycling, there is a very it's kind of a bit of a taboo subject to talk about, but there is a very big issue in weight because obviously the lighter you are, the less weight you have to carry up a hill. And a
Mm.
lot of the biggest bike races in the world involve a lot of big hills. And there's like a very big issue that still needs to be resolved in that sport. And it's not just cycling, it's athletics as well. And no one really wants to be the one to talk about it because it's a bit of like oh, we shouldn't really talk about that subject. But at the end of the day, there's thousands of people like every year in the sport that will get injured or have to stop or retire or just break down and don't achieve their full potential because they're under eating, they're under fueling. I think it's Red S, so relative energy deficiency in sport is the sort of known name of it. But if you're in a sport like that, where weight is already a factor that's pretty prevalent, no matter if you've got an eating disorder or not, people will still have behaviors of those who have eating disorders, but they won't actually have one. It's just the behavior is associated with the sport. So I think that probably was another factor that contributed to my issue being anorexia, like the control of it, but then also the fact that in that sport, if you're lighter, it's actually going to benefit you to a certain point, and if you do it right. But a lot of people, it goes over the point where being lighter will actually help you, and it will just ruin you.
Because they've depleted all the glycogen stores.
Yeah, and just like you just walk around like a zombie. Like you wake up, you're just tired. You train, you're tired. You go to bed, you're tired, but you don't sleep because you can't sleep because your body's got so much cortisol running through it that you just can't sleep. You wake up, you're still tired. Just like a cyclical nature, really.
Do you think you're getting like addicted to that kind of feeling of being like running on adrenaline, or like you say that cortisol? Like, is there something there as well?
I think I've got quite an addictive personality in the fact that if I find something that I enjoy or want to be good at, I'll get good at it, or I'll do it to like the nth degree. Like Hyrox, I did that, I found that, and I was like, right, I'm not gonna half-ass it. I'm just gonna go like balls to the wall and just try and get as good as possible. So I think that's like it is an issue that becomes prevalent in sort of endurance sports. Like you see the weight on the scale and it goes down, and then you're like, oh, I must be getting like fitter here because I'm going down. Oh, it's gone down again and again and again. Stops going down. Oh, why has it stopped going down? Oh, I should probably get rid of that. Down and down. So I think if you do an endurance sport, you've got to have an addictive personality anyway. Because like a lot of people, I'll just use cycling again because it's easier. A lot of people will wake up, like a lot of people who want to be pro cyclists or do well at it, they'll wake up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. They'll look out the window, it's freezing cold and raining, and they'll be like, I've got to go out for a 4-hour bike ride. And it kind of takes an addictive personality in the sport to actually get out the door and do that. So I think when something comes up that an addictive personality attracts, it kind of festers inside of you. And then obviously the scales are the main thing in endurance sports. I've gone all over the place with that last couple of minutes. I'm sorry about that, but I hope I got the message across.
Not at all, mate. I think you were more on the fucking ball than I was. Yeah, mate, so interesting. I think you're so right as well. Like the endurance sport thing. You know, I'll look at like anyone that's really got like the drive to do well in endurance sports usually have some sort of fucking chip on the shoulder.
Oh yeah.
You know, I've got friends who are like really happy and at peace with their life. They're not running as fast as me.
Yeah.
Because like I don't know, and they're just like, oh, I'm just gonna do it to enjoy the race, and I'm like, oh yeah, me too. And then like a few weeks out, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna fucking go as fast as I can, and that's the like the other side of this, where you've got that kind of like that insufficiency. There's something driving you. I mean, my last year was my first year in Hyrox, And I think the fuel I was using to motivate me was very like somewhat toxic. It was kind of angry, like, you know, I'd been through some tough shit, and I was able to sort of harness that, like to push me forward.
Mhm.
But like, interested, like this year, like I've done this therapy, and I'm kind of much happier. So I've had to kind of like find a different kind of way of motivating myself than the fucking angry version, like the David Goggins
Yeah.
sort of style. So you know, it's so interesting, but I think at the core of it, I've still got something driving me.
Yeah, like I'm just trying to find on my laptop now as I'm talking. I did a university piece when I was at uni on the link between trauma, addiction, and high level performing athletes.
Oh wow!
Um, I'm just going to try and find it here, and
Yeah, please do.
it's a very like when you dig into like the rabbit hole and like start actually like looking through like elite performers, they all have gone through some sort of trauma
Mhm.
to get to that point. So I'm just trying to open the file now, just because I think it'll be a good addition.
Yeah.
So, for instance, in sport, we've got Nick Bear. Do you know him?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Big
he,
jacked marathon guy.
yeah. So he's doing a Hyrox, and he went through an eating disorder when he was younger as well. Fergus Crawley, do you know?
Don't know.
So he does some ridiculous challenges. Like he ran a 250-kilometer ultra marathon, like to the base of Ben Nevis. He's done like a 1,200 pound powerlifting total and a sub 12 hour Ironman in the same day. But
Wow.
he tried taking his own life when he was about my age. So he's been through that trauma. Mike Thompson. So I've spoken with Mike a couple of times. He's had cancer 4 times and has had like 75 different surgeries, but has
Wow.
still done an Ironman even after all of this. And
Yeah.
then Lionel Sanders, he was an alcohol addict when he was
Mhm.
younger. And then even in like the sort of market leader world, there's Ben West, Elon Musk as well. I never actually
Mhm.
wrote the piece on Elon Musk because it was all a bit convoluted and whatnot. But
Mhm.
there is like a distinct connection between trauma and addiction and whatnot, and then people
Mhm.
ending up as elite athletes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, it's such a good coping mechanism to get into sport. And I think as long as you're aware of like that it is kind of like another addiction, but it's thankfully it's a good
Yeah,
addiction to an extent. As long as you've got that awareness, then you're not blindsided. You know, when all of a sudden, if something was to like, you know, if you were to get injured or anything, that you need, you know, that doesn't just knock you off your feet
yeah,
and you'd be like, oh, I've got no self worth and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic. I wondered actually how, because Hyrox is a very interesting sport. Certainly for you to have like turned up in, because I was thinking about the body comp thing. How do you like, given like your history? How do you? Because like Hyrox is, there's a lot of vanity, there's a lot of shirts off, and all the rest of it. Uh, what are your thoughts on like the body image in Hyrox specifically?
as in for performance or just the general sort of.
All of it together, like, you know, what, like how do you feel like an event? Are you Are you the sort of person that will compare yourself? Do you feel like it's healthy because you've got more? It's more of a muscle mass thing rather than starving yourself on a
Mhm.
bike type thing.
Um, if it was a shirt on sport, I wouldn't complain. The only real reason I take my shirt off is because, like we mentioned earlier, I get really hot really quickly, and it's just one less thing that's going to keep me warm.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've never, since I've done the sport, I've never really cared about how I look, because at the end of the day, you can look like an absolute brick shit house, like 6'5", massive, huge guns, but then can you run fast? Can you finish it? Like, can you finish it quick? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the only metric, thankfully, is what time do you start and what time do you finish, and how long is that? That's the only metric that matters. Like, it doesn't really matter if you're like, I've got like a mate Trav, like 5.5 foot. Doesn't matter if you're that. Doesn't matter if you're 6.5 foot. Doesn't matter if you're massive, skinny, whatever. Just all that matters is what time you finish. If you're being competitive. So I think the fact that you can take your top off has kind of brought in the whole sort of big like gymfluencer type folk
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
into the sport, just because it's like you can show your muscles. But I don't really, I don't really pay too much attention to it. Like if there's a massive guy, I'll be like, fair play, mate. You've worked hard, but then that's it. Like,
Mm.
and in terms of the actual fueling and whatnot, and how your body works with it, I think it's one of the best sports in the world. Just because you need to have some level of muscle mass, but then you also need to be cardiovascularly fit. And I can't remember what the study was, but there's a study where, like, if you weight train, it adds like 3 or 4 years onto your life, and then if you do cardiovascular exercise, it adds like 6 or 7. And the fact that you're getting two massive stimuli
Mm-hmm.
from that one sport is brilliant, and it's a very accessible sport. Like, yeah, you might not have a rowing machine at your gym or a ski erg or whatever, but if you've got some trainers, you can do burpees, you can do lunges, like you can do whatever. And I think that's probably the best thing about it, just the accessibility and the fact that at the moment there is no defined body type. Like, there is no perfect physique. Like if you look at the men's field, you've got Michael Sandback, who's like 91, 92 kilos, 6'3", just an absolute unit. And then James Kelly, who's 5'10", I think. Like, and they're pretty level. Dylan Scott, who's a bit slimmer, but then you just get, and then Hunter McIntyre, when he's racing heavy, like, he's just massive. There
Mm-hmm.
is no defined body type, and then it's very similar in the women's field. Like, you've got shorter athletes, taller athletes, slimmer athletes, bigger athletes, but at the end of the day, it's fair game, really.
Yeah, it's got. Do you know? I was thinking. I was out and having a little walk last night, and it just popped into my head, and it was kind of simple or obvious, but I was like, it's kind of like mixed martial arts for like gym and endurance, because you've got all this combination of things, and I think that's why it's taken off. But obviously it's more accessible than MMA. What are your thoughts on PEDs in Hyrox?
That's a good question. That's a very,
Mm.
very good question. And do you know Mark Lewis?
YouTube guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I've seen him at a couple of high. I was actually on one of his videos once. My first Hyrox, pushing a sled like fucking knackered.
I'm just
Um,
dying next to him.
yeah.
Um, so he spoke about this in one of his like last videos. I don't really keep much track. and he's on TRT now, and he's like, I still want to do Hyroxes, but my times will not be official. And I think that's for like the general public, like that's completely fine, because I'm not going to point fingers and I'm not going to say names and whatever, but there is definitely people who are taking stuff when they're at an event, and you get that in every sport. Like, people will be doing marathons, they'll be taking like performance enhancing drugs. Athletics, like just bodybuilders, a lot of people take sports enhancing drugs and won't say anything about it. They just keep it very quiet. Like, I think it's considered like an epidemic in the UK, the amount of people taking steroids in just regular gym spaces. So if you would if you can openly admit, yep, I'm taking drugs, still race, still have your time there, but it won't be I think it shouldn't be counted for anything. But then if you're actively looking to compete in like the Elite 15, for instance, and you're on some sort of drug that's enhancing your performance and you're trying to keep it secret, there's no space for that. And if anyone gets caught, you shouldn't be able to compete again.
Are they tested now? Because I'd heard that they were, but
yeah. So at Nice, it was the top three in every top three finishers in every event, and then 2 random people outside the top 3, I think. But then I also heard somewhere that they tested them beforehand and whatnot. So that's what I know from it. And I think as the sport becomes more professionalized and as more money gets involved, the testing is going to become a bit more prevalent. And I don't think it'll ever get to the point where the everyday athlete is getting tested. But I think if you're in and around the Elite 15, you should be completely prepared to get tested. Like in cycling, for instance, if you're in the World Tour, you have to declare your location every hour of the day so that WADA can come to your door or come to the restaurant where you're having dinner with your family and ask you to do a drugs test on the spot. And I think eventually it will get to that point where there's out of competition testing just to make sure that an athlete isn't doing drugs and then weaning off of them into an event. So I think, as unfortunate as it is, there has to be testing, because there's always going to be people that try and find holes in the system and try and get through the net. But it's just part and parcel of sport. It always has been since drugs became prevalent, and it always will be, if I'm honest.
And how does that make you feel where, I think you mentioned that, your goal this year is to get into the Elite 15, and you're, training your fucking ass off, and you're thinking, okay, that guy's on them. One, how does it make you feel? And two, just, would you ever... would you ever be worried that you might be persuaded, or what are your thoughts about how you might cope with that feeling?
Well, firstly, I don't think anyone's on drugs in the Elite 15.
Okay.
I've always maintained the fact you're innocent until proven guilty. If someone's absolutely just sculpted, ridiculously built, just looks like the most athletic person there is, and they've not been caught on drugs, then they're not on drugs. They're just a hard worker. And there's some athletes, particularly in the women's field for some reason, who just get so much stick about, oh, you're taking this, oh, you're taking that, oh, you're just on drugs. When at the end of the day, no one's been caught on the drugs, so they're not taking drugs, and like they've just worked hard. They just worked harder than that. And then in terms of me, I I never really even think about it taking drugs. Like if someone offered them to me, I'd be like, not even necessarily for like the physical like benefits you get from them, but to take drugs and then compete against clean people and claim to be better than them, like morally is just completely incorrect. Like obviously physically it's like I just wouldn't take it anyway, but the morals behind it and the fact that you're claiming to be something you aren't, and if you're on drugs and you become the world champion whilst on drugs, it's a very, very hollow victory inside your own head. And I think it would feel more like a defeat than a victory if that happened to me.
Mate, that's such a good point. You said it perfectly. Like, can you imagine that? I mean, I suppose maybe if you've got like psychopath fucking tendencies or whatever,
Yeah.
maybe you might not care. But like, yeah, it'd be like playing Monopoly and like cheating, and like,
Yeah, it's like knowing you're going to win. Like, the whole point in sport is to compete, and like the whole process of getting to that point. But if you're like, well, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. Like, if you're just going to like beat everyone because you're on drugs and then claim that you're clean and whatnot, it's just like I personally, I know everyone's minds work differently. I couldn't do it. Like I'll just be stood on the top step. Like I know I shouldn't be here. I know I shouldn't be here. Everyone's behaving like I've like done something incredible. I just couldn't do it, if I'm honest.
yeah, I believe you. You come across as very authentic. I think everyone who's listening would agree. So yeah, I believe you when you say that. Um, what have you been up to like on your off season? I know you did. Did you do the ultra in your off season?
Um, what, the charity one?
Yeah.
No, that was in the middle of the season,
Oh,
which
the
was a
middle
bit of
season.
a bad decision. So I did
Savage.
Hyrox Manchester weekend off, Hyrox Vienna weekend off, Ultra.
Ah, yeah, that's because okay, got you. Have you just been like working on your strength in the off season? Have you done much? Like, have you kept up your cardio? Like, what's it look like?
I don't tend to talk about my training,
Fair one.
um, but I will. I'll just be completely open on here because I've kind of accepted the fact that everyone's going to find out about your training one day or another, and it's educating others, so I may as
Don't
well.
feel pressured.
Oh no, so like I've kind of identified my weaknesses, and my weakness coming from an endurance background has always been my strength. So I've put a heavy emphasis on improving my overall strength, but then also my engine. So I bulked up a bit, got up to about 93 or like 93, 94 kilos, and then just really have like hammered home a high end strength. But then
How much
also,
of an increase was that on your finishing weight from last season?
so last year I was 86 kilos, between
Okay.
85 and 86. In London, I was at 85 kilos, which is probably optimal for me.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit too light. Um, but I've put a heavy emphasis on that, but then also a heavy emphasis on sort of, I've always been a massive advocate on double threshold days and threshold work, not like going into the red, like a sustained sort of Norwegian method of training. And I've just really emphasized that in the off season. And like I had a bit of a testing block these last couple of days just to kind of see where my like strength fatigue is, and like it's all starting to come together. Like I just hit a, it's pretty like puny numbers compared to some people I know, but like a 3 rep max and a 4 rep max in the deadlift. Then yesterday I had a double threshold session, which was kind of aimed at pushing the needle forward and seeing how my body actually responds now after all this.
What's a double threshold session, by the way?
So it's originally from like the Norwegians, because they, like, I think they've got a population of like 3.8 million, but it's the highest gold medals per capita of any nation in the world. And one of their main training methodologies is double threshold. So it's 2 threshold sessions in one day, but it's a very sustained threshold. So it's not like you're gasping for air kind of level. It's very much like controlled. And I've always been a massive advocate for it. And
so what, in terms of like maybe like heart rate zones, how would that look?
So, well, I'll just go over what I did yesterday. So I did 5 by 8 minutes on the assault bike, and my heart rate, my morning threshold is always a bit easier than my evening threshold, as in like it's the lower end. So my heart rate averaged like 168 for the 4 efforts, and in a Hyrox, my average heart rate's about 190.
So like zone 3,
like low
Ish.
zone 4. Like
low zone 4. Okay.
And then in the evening I did 8 by 1k. So the first session that was off of 2 minutes recovery, so 8 minutes on, 2 minutes off. And then yesterday I did 8 by 1k with 1 minute recovery, and that was aimed at kind of being a bit quicker, so just going through the gears. And I aim to have about 8 hours between the 2 of those sessions. And then
and have you been doing those sessions off season? Do you say?
Yes, but in a sort of more extensive manner. So I'll combine them into one a lot of the time, but then it's always a very controlled effort. So like I did one on Saturday 2 weeks ago, and I banked like an hour and 20 minutes at threshold intensity. And that's my main training methodology, but then I'm also a zone 2 merchant. Like everyone always like harps on about it, but I've been an advocate for it since about 2017, 2016, like when I first got into cycling. And I think that's probably the best thing that's happened for me, and like allowing me to just go, like progress more and more onwards, is just I'm constantly increasing that base of the pyramid, and it just allows you to build higher up. So training's been good. Just a lot of zone 2, a lot of threshold, a lot of high end strength, and it's all kind of coming into one now with like compromised work. And then hopefully in Birmingham and Poznan the weekend after, I can put it all to good use.
So you've not been doing like much like sprinting type intervals, anything like that?
Not really sprinting. Like I do strides at the end of a lot of my runs and whatnot, but I've done some efforts where it's like 2 minute efforts at like 3 minute Ks or under, which is like very anaerobic and like hard, but I never really do sprint efforts, just because a max, like a 5 rep max on the deadlift, is a very similar sort of energy system to sprinting. Like it's the sort of very short 3 to 10 second maximal load. So that's like where I get a lot of that sort of training intensity from. But sprinting, I might introduce it. Like if I start to plateau and it's never been something I've tried, I'll try it and see if it pushes me on forwards. But I've never really done sprinting.
So interesting. And like, where have you like learned a lot of this stuff? Have you are you doing any coaching stuff, or?
Well, I'm a bit of a nerd, so that's probably the best. Like, I'll happily just sit down and watch like a 2 hour long YouTube video about how zone 4 training will change your life, kind of thing. And I've always been like, I'm just always been passionate about it, like sport in general. And I just always want to learn about how I can get better than, but then how I can help get other people, like make them better athletes. So I've recently started coaching, and I've got a few athletes on board. And double threshold, for instance, one of my things, I'd only program that for like athletes who are really starting to want to push the needle. Because if you're like beginner or intermediate, it's probably a bit too much strain. Just because at points, like if you're, especially if you're doing it in a marathon block, like it can be like 30k, 32, 34k of running a day for the threshold day, and that's just quite a lot. But yeah, I coach a bit. I've made quite a few training plans. I'm in the process of making more that are just cheap but designed just to mainly get people into sport and get people into coaching. And then I've got a long-term business desire that's kind of in the works to help get coaches in contact with clients as well. That's not really associated with me and my methodologies, but it's more helping other people both find coaches, but then also coaches find clients.
Okay, so like a marketplace type thing,
Yeah,
or
like so the clients will be able to trial out the coaches. If they like them, they can just go off my site, leave, and go and work one-to-one with them.
interesting. That's cool. Sounds interesting. You were good enough to fill out my form when you booked. We booked this in, and one of the things you said, because I asked a question like, "What would make this a good interview for you?" You said, "Make sure that the stories I tell will make people think twice, question themselves, but more importantly, change." Double click on that for me.
That so I handed in that questionnaire thing whilst I was like deep working on my book. So I'm writing all it's essentially a self-improvement book, but it's kind of collating knowledge and theories and experiences from all the like best people in the industries, like in the world, on how you can make the most of your time, but then also how you can make the most of the people's time around you. So how you can just benefit others as well. So it's a very sort of that phrase there that I just said, like in the questionnaire. It's very much like a lot of people aren't where they want to be because of things they can control, and we all have something that's holding us back that we might not know about, but that maybe if I said a sentence here that kind of makes you think, and then you kind of have a eureka moment like, oh my God, I've been doing this all wrong. So that's the whole like, think twice, like, oh, what am I doing that could be more efficient, and change to make what I'm doing more efficient. So it's like, that's the main, that's the main goal I have now, is kind of just to make people change for good, like, and just improve themselves. It doesn't have to be like running the length of Africa or just doing stupid, ridiculous challenges like whatnot, but it could literally be just something that makes you want to get out of bed in the morning a bit more sprightfully, or just saves you 10 minutes of your day just to be more productive.
The book you're writing at the moment, you said it's about time. Would you like tap into some of the concepts and stuff that you're exploring?
So the initial whole element of it was 4 rules that I've kind of lived my life by, to put it simply. Like, people who know me will just be like rolling their eyes like, oh, here he goes again. So it's 4 rules: the 3-second rule, the 5-minute rule, the 30-minute rule, and the 48-hour rule. And then 4 concepts around semi related to them. And then within that, 35, I think it is at the moment. Different lessons from different people about just different things. So the 3 second rule, like, I've got it all on my drive here. I've just got my phone up just to go through
Good
it. So
lad.
like it's just full of different things. Like it's just each one's just full of just countless different,
Oh, look at this. Yeah, I love it, mate.
all color coded.
Fuck yeah.
Sorry if anyone's listening. You can't see all the different color coded things. But yeah, so 3 second rule is like you count down from three and you do whatever it is because it just eliminates time for you to question what could go wrong or what if. So that's a very, very basic description of it. But I don't know, you're at a bar or you're out somewhere and there's someone that you're really attracted to and you want to talk to them, but you're like, you, 3, 2, 1. Just eliminates any room for you to think otherwise.
I have a little confession to make. I heard you talking about this on Greg's, and I heard the first one. And actually, this morning, I woke up and I was feeling a little bit tired, and I was kind of like, and then I went 3, 2, 1.
Yeah,
So I used it. Yeah, so I thought you might be happy to hear that.
Obviously, it's not with everything. Like,
Yeah.
it's every rule is kind of to an extent, but it's kind of just it eliminates time for distraction and time to think otherwise.
Yeah, so what are the other ones?
5 minutes, which is if you can do something in 5 minutes that you've been putting off, just do it now. And that's about a whole sort of like consistency compounds concept. So if you do that for an hour, you've done 12 things that you've been putting off. So for instance, like this shelf here of I've been needing to dust it because there's dust on like the different units. That'll take me less than 5 minutes, but it's something that's been needing to be done. So I'll just do it. And then it goes a lot more nuanced than that. And then different lessons come in and how it's benefited like the best people in the world. 30 minutes, which is if, to an extent, if something like shitty happens to you in your life that pisses you off, fucks you over, whatnot, be sad, mopey, in a shit mood because of it for 30 minutes. But then once 30 minutes has happened, like, you can't change it. Stop being a moody little shit and move on. So it's like, I'm trying to think of a personal experience where I've used this that's not too personal. But it's like you're driving your car and someone like pulls out, delays everyone and makes you late for work. Don't spend the whole rest of the day pissed off at that one person for delaying your day. Like, be annoyed about it for 30 minutes, but then at the end of the day, you can't change it. It's happened. Obviously, like, if a relative passes away or something, you don't use the 30-minute rule. Grieve for your relative kind of thing. But if, like, someone annoys you, someone upsets you, something happens that's out of your control that, like, makes issue, just don't let it spill over into other elements of your day, because otherwise you'll just have a shit day. And like,
yeah, what I'm thinking as well is like I'm trying to think of like what would work for me in that, and it's like I think one of those things you're kind of looking to reduce it by like a considerable amount. So if you said I suppose if you were like, if it's something that might ruin your day, let's say that's 7 hours, so that's 14 or whatever. So you could divide that by 14 and then go, right, okay, so rather than it taking a whole day for me to get over, I'm going to schedule the next 30 minutes to allow myself to feel this, and then I'm going to move on. I keep what came to mind for me was like, I don't know, like, are you single? Are you got Mrs.?
I'm very single, yeah.
Same. So, like, you know, if you're like, it's, I don't know, if you're like maybe talking to a lass and like it's going quite well, and then you just get blindsided and they fuck you off. Let's say it's not like a long-term thing, so you've only been chatting for whatever, and then you get that feeling your stomach and like it's kind of like horrible. Like I think that would be a good one. Like if it's only been like a short amount of time, just like 30 minutes, and then we move on.
That's one of the personal experiences that I was going to
Is
not
it?
go over, but yeah, something like that happened. It was a bit more. It was a bit more than a few weeks talking, but I kind of used the rule there, and everyone was like, "You're a bit psychopathic for using the rule there," and I was like, "Makes me get over it quicker."
Yeah, it's like I suppose it's how much grief does this person like deserve from me? And if you're like, yeah, fucking hell, she meant so much to me or whatever, then all right, maybe I'm gonna spend a bit more time of it.
Yeah.
But if it's like, well, we weren't talking that long, and yeah, I'm not gonna let it ruin my life, then. And I think and as well with like getting over relationships, certainly if you're the one that's been hurt, I don't know, like you don't want to let that like fuck you up and
Oh yeah.
like negatively affect you like anymore. So interesting, mate. I'm like, honestly, if I just the your output at your age is astounding. So I just wanted to say, like, honestly, like it's so inspiring. And like I hope there's like other like lads your age or a bit younger or lasses that will take something from this. You said on Greg's podcast as well that there were these 10 things that you wrote down that you wanted to do when you got to uni. This was quite a catalytic moment for you. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, right. So I'll get my phone out again. So on.
You said you weren't going to share all of them, so I won't push you on that. But if there's anything on there, I was interested to know.
So on my 20th birthday, I wrote a list of 10 things that I wanted to do by my 30th birthday. And I set a timer, and I'm not sure if you can see that. There's 2,549 days left.
Fuck yes.
Of the time before the day is what it's stated as.
Is that just on an iPhone timer?
It's an app.
Okay.
The app's called... What is the app called? I can't even... I've clicked on the app, but it doesn't even tell you what the app's actually called. That's a really... Pretty Progress is what the app is called.
Pretty Progress.
Not sure why it's called that, but that's...
Are you familiar with, I think it's the Bill Gates quote. Are you familiar with that one?
Which one?
I think it relates to that. I think it's we underestimate what we can get done in a year, but we overestimate what we can get done in 12 months, but we underestimate what we can get done in 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's such a good one.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Oh yeah. Well, just things on the list. It's kind of very much like one of them was get 2 books published. And then there was another one which was sort of 3 different things in one. Do an Ironman, run 100k, and climb Kilimanjaro. That's another 3, all like physical challenges. And then there's one about retiring my family by 30. So make sure that my parents are all retired and can go and do what old people do. Don't really know what old people do, but just go and retire and live the rest of their life happy. And then the last one I'll share is to dive with a whale shark and or a manta ray, because they're my 2 favourite animals. So that's like, I've always said if life ever went wrong, I'll just go out to like the Maldives or something and then just just become a scuba diving instructor and just dive with the like the sharks and whatnot.
Have you ever done any scuba diving?
Never.
Yeah,
but it's my it's one thing I'd love to do. Just be with like a whale shark. As sad as that sounds.
Yeah, it's cool. I did. I got my license when I was out in Thailand.
Oh wow!
So I've done a little bit. I did a little bit of that. I swam with a manta ray.
That's you've ticked off one item.
I've ticked one of them off. Yeah, that was. And it was quite amazing, actually. I was taking a 3-day boat, like in Indonesia. I went on this boat, and you slept on the deck. It was like this for 3 days to get to the island of Komodo, where the only place in the world where the Komodo dragons are.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, when we were out there, we like all these manta rays, and then yeah, I'll have to find it. I've got a picture of me like in the water, like I've swum down and I'm kind of with it, but like,
That's
so
wicked.
yeah, so that was cool. The only thing is about scuba diving with me is I always get sore ears. I think like I get water trapped in my ears, so it ends up being quite painful. But yeah, Kilimanjaro. I'd like to do that. I'll come with you.
We'll go out there in like a couple of years' time.
Yeah, let's do it. That's what like one I've been thinking of as well. So yeah, I love it. Was that all 10? Did you get all 10 on there?
Oh no, that wasn't all 10.
Quite a lot.
That was like 4 because 3 of them came in at once.
Oh yeah, I didn't know if you were saying 3 in 1 or 1 in 3. Yeah. Okay.
And then I would have done Everest instead of Kilimanjaro, but then I kind of thought about the risk to reward. Like, too many people have climbed Everest now for it to be like, it's still an insane feat, but for it to be like an insane feat, but then the likelihood of you dying is a bit too high. So it's like, I'll leave that to like the really like experienced climbers, but I'm just gonna go and do Kilimanjaro because it's a bit easier.
Yeah, I've still got the Everest thing still like creeps in my head every now and then. I've got like I used to have like a mild obsession with it, just always watching documentaries and stuff, but I feel like Kilimanjaro is like definitely more attainable and cheaper.
Yeah, substantially cheaper.
A lot of money to be able to do Everest, haven't you?
Yeah.
I've already mentioned that I think you're like super impressive human being, everything that you're doing at the moment, your Hyrox, like your business pursuits, your book writing. Do you find time for fun, joy, or play?
I'm very much like, I enjoy, as much of a cop out as it sounds, I enjoy what I do. Like, obviously it can be stressful at times, but I do enjoy it. But then in terms of going out and whatnot, I like when I was at uni, I never went clubbing. I've never been clubbing, and I'm very much sort of, I can go out for a drink with my mates, but I prefer just to be my switching off and having fun is just being in like with people or helping people or interacting or just pursuing something. Like, I don't play Xbox anymore. Like, I used to when I was a kid, but I haven't played it since 2022 probably. Like, I don't watch TV series. I can't really tell you the last TV series I ever watched, if I'm honest. It was probably Breaking Bad with my dad back in like 2018.
I recently rewatched it actually.
So I think it's pretty much the only one I've ever finished, I think. That and Salvation, which was one about like a meteor that was coming to Earth. It was pretty awful, if I'm honest.
You're not seen Game of Thrones?
No. I got to season 8 of The Walking Dead, but I was like,
okay,
that's about it. That's all I can really hack. It's just kind of flogging a dead horse now. So I do switch off, but being a single person, it's quite difficult. And since I've just left uni now, like, a lot of my friends are all over the place. And being up in Birmingham at the moment, I'm moving home I'm home at the moment, but I'm moving home in December time. Like,
sorry, home is London.
home's Oxford.
Home's Oxford.
Went to uni in London. My dad lives in London.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I live in Birmingham. But I'm moving.
Why did you move to Birmingham?
I moved up there for work.
Okay.
But I'm not in that job anymore. So I'm kind of waiting my lease out.
Right, okay.
So yeah, I moved up there in just after uni. But, and like for Hyrox, Forder's Gym, I'm sure you've probably heard of it. It's like the best training environment I've ever been in. So I'll be in Oxford at home, but I'll still drive up to there on Monday nights when I train there because it's south of Birmingham near Redditch. So it's only actually like a 90-minute, 80-minute drive for me. And once a week, I'll happily do that just because I like it. But yeah, so I don't really have an off button, and I don't switch off a lot, which is probably not great, but I do value time with people in a more relaxed environment, like at the pub or something, even if I don't really drink that much.
Yeah, mate. I'm very similar in like, other than the fact that you're absolutely fucking crushing it in Hyrox, but like, I would probably have a very similar response. I literally had the same conversation with someone this morning, actually. And I'm like, yeah, like the fun thing. I'm like, yeah, like training's fun. Like,
That's my dog.
so,
He,
and
he's really old, so he coughs a bit funny. So if you can hear that, I'm sorry.
no, it's fine. But yeah, but I think there's like, if you do find it's fun, then that's great. Like, have you come across Alex Hormozy?
Oh, I love him.
Yeah, I thought you
I
might
love what he
say.
goes on about.
Yeah, I mean that's his whole thing, right? His fun is making money. His fun is working, and yeah, not everyone is able to get on board with it. But I certainly think like periodization is good for this sort of thing. So many concepts can come back to training, can't they? Like,
Oh yeah,
it's really good for like looking at things like that, and you think, right, well, right now, like my whole focus has been like towards Birmingham. So after Birmingham, I'll have a bit of time off, to have a bit of fun or whatever, and then I'll go again for doubles in Manchester in January. January, yeah. So, yeah, I think periodizing these things are useful.
when are you racing in Birmingham? Like what? Which day?
Saturday.
In the Open?
Yes.
Because I'm doing the Pro one on the Saturday evening. So if I'm there, I'll come and give you a bit
nice.
give you a bit of support.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, yeah. Come for the lunges. Go on, Chase.
The worst bit. Penultimate bit is always the worst bit.
Yeah, I think I might be staying over both days. So yeah, likewise, I'll try and stick around to watch your race. All right, mate. Well, we shall start to wrap this up now. What about, other than getting into the Elite 15 and all the things that you've already told us about, have you got any plans on the horizon that we haven't spoken about?
Specific to Hyrox or just
Anything?
not really anything concrete. Like I want to do a pretty mental challenge next summer. Which is one of two things. One's a bit more toned down, but it's still pretty bonkers, and the other's very, very bonkers. So the toned down one is do a marathon around Hampden Park in Scotland, then the Millennium Stadium in Wales, and then Wembley Stadium in England. So 3 marathons around them, but in a day.
Oh, so, right, okay. It's a bit like the Three Peaks, but
yeah. So start on the clock midnight in Scotland, drive down to Wales, get to Wales, do the marathon there, drive into Wembley, do the marathon there, all before the day ends.
savage.
So 125k.
Have you scheduled this in yet, or is this just on the?
That's like very much like I've worked out the logistics and it's possible. Just because thankfully the traffic from Scotland to Wales at like 4 o'clock in the morning isn't too bad on the weekends. So I've kind of scheduled that could work, but then a more like extreme version that would require some funding. Like both these will be done for charity, but then a more extreme version that would require a little bit more funding is 3 continents in 24 hours. So, but I want to finish it in England, which is
3 continents in 24 hours.
So I had a look on like flight timings and whatnot, and I want to finish it in England just because I live in England, and it's just finishing in London, something that big would just be quite monumental if it got a bit of support. So it was Cairo, Istanbul, England. But it would be very risky in the fact that you'd need to run a quick first marathon to get on the flight in time for the second one. You'd need to run a quick second one to get on the flight in time to get to the UK. And it's very much like you need to give yourself 4 hours to do, like under 4 hours to do the first one. Organised with like the airport security. Can I just get through the airport straight away onto this flight, like no delays? Just so it would essentially need a bit of backing and a bit of help from an airline company. But that's like kind of the big dream sort of.
That's cool.
Be the first person to do that.
My Protein will pay for it, won't they?
Yeah, get like My Protein or Red Bull involved. Or just a private charter, someone that can just fly a jet for me.
Are you am I Protein sponsoring you at the moment? Or
It's like a smaller deal. Like it could materialize into something a bit bigger, but it's kind of just a bit more like
kind of like a affiliate type thing.
Yeah, so I still get kickback from it, and I get like monthly income from it, but it's a bit more of like just a starter deal, and then if I make it into the Elite 15, it'll probably get better from there.
So cool, mate. I love your enthusiasm. I love like all the stuff that you got in the pipeline, and can't wait to watch it all happen.
Touch wood.
Where should I direct people? Your Instagram, website, anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm only really active on Instagram, and it's Charlie_EFMB. So the EFMB are my initials. So just follow me on there, and then DMs are always open. Without sounding very arrogant, I get a lot of DMs, and I'm very bad at keeping up with them. So expect a couple of days reply time for some people, just because I try to stay off my phone as much as possible, just because I don't really like social media, but I kind of understand that it's pretty vital in today's society. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Yeah, they don't make any like decent tools for managing your inbox, which really annoys me. Like, because they could.
Oh yeah.
Like, if they wanted to, they could be like, right, show all unread, put them into a tag. You know, like why they don't offer that is.
Oh, you can see all the unread on Instagram if you go to the top right corner and press filter.
Yeah, you can do that, can't you?
But my one keeps on glitching, so I have to constantly refresh it. Otherwise, not all the some messages just disappear.
Right.
And and then I can only actually read the message if I actively go onto the person's account.
Oh, really?
Press message, and then it pops up. So some people I've probably got messages from like a month ago, and they've just not appeared.
Instagram's so glitchy. I always get issues when I'm creating reels, or like there's always something where it just like freaks out. I think I was thinking, yeah, you can do the show unread, but like, what's the issue that I have? I always think like
followers and following or something like that.
Yeah, but like I wish I could be like, when I open one, I'm like, oh, okay, right, just put that in. Like like star it and like push it to the top or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
like a priorities list almost.
Because I can mark it as unread, and I can pin, and I can. Can you put a pin next to it? But it doesn't actually pin it at the top. Something
Yeah.
like that. Sound like a right old fart. Right, mate. I'll let you go. Have a good weekend.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the call, Jace.
Yeah. Take care, mate.
See you in a bit. Bye.
Hey guys, it's me. Thank you so much for watching that episode, and congratulations for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. A few things before you get going. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to both my guests and myself. And if you made it this far, why don't you drop me a DM?